Hey there, welcome back to Module 3 about nurture sequences. Here in Lesson 4, we're talking about product style nurture sequences. This, remember, is what we talked about, where you're asking your subscribers to take another step on their journey with you right away. That's when you're going to use this style of nurture sequence. And based on when I've kind of, surveyed my audience, this is going to be used about 25% of the time. So about a quarter of the time, you're going to use this style of nurture sequence in your business. So, in this lesson, we're going to cover the two varieties of product style nurture sequences because there's actually two different things you might do. And we're going to talk about the three kinds of emails that you'll tend to use and the specific order you're going to want to use those emails in. So that's what we'll be talking about here in this lesson. Now, again, quick reminder, with a product style nurture sequence, you are coaching subscribers to take the next step. And so product style nurture sequences generally invite one of two actions. The first action is to purchase a Tripwire. Now, if you're not familiar with the term Tripwire, it's just a fancy word for a low price offer related to your freebie. Now, you'll often use a Tripwire not because you're really trying to make a lot of money, but as a way to defray ad costs. So you want to get some money in the door quickly from people who you are paying for Facebook ads to get them on your list. So this is a way to kind of bring down the actual cost you're paying for your new leads by getting them to purchase some low price offer. Now, depending on your niche, depending on who you serve, this is generally going to be a product that's $27 or less. Oftentimes, it's something that you're giving them a discount on. It's something that you would typically charge more for, but you give them a discount for a limited period after they get on your list. Quick example. I have, for someone who gets on my list, my lead magnet on the legal stuff is a free privacy policy. Then I have an offer for them to buy the other two legal policies they need for their website. Normally that would cost $97 on my website, but I have a Tripwire offer that gives people a limited period of time to purchase that pack for $27. The whole purpose of that is so that instead of spending the $2 or $2.50 of what I'm actually paying Facebook per lead, it actually brings it down under $1 of what I'm actually paying because enough people are buying that $27 offer to defray some of the costs. So that's a Tripwire purchase. If you're using that style of, if that's kind of what your funnel is, and you're going to give people a period other than just like the 15 minutes right after they download the freebie to make this purchase, then you're going to use a product style nurture sequence. Now, the other thing you might be asking them to do is to register for some kind of sales event. So a webinar, a video series, a challenge, any kind of launch mechanism. It could be something that you do on an evergreen basis, or it could be something that you're doing as a live launch. For example, when I first launched this course, this product, Badass Email Marketing, we had a quiz that people could take in advance. We sent them to the quiz for a freebie and then invited them to sign up for a webinar on the back end of that. So in that case, I had a product style webinar invite, kind of a product style nurture sequence that was inviting people to join the webinar. So those are the two actions you'll generally be using. Now, in either case, what I want you to recognize is you're selling your subscribers on something. You're either literally selling them to buy something, or you're selling them to sign up to spend more time with you. Either case, it is a sale. You are trying to get them to take that next step. And since you're selling, you'll want to create basically a mini sales sequence. That's why in a couple lessons ago, I talked about these as almost a mini promo sequence. It's not as involved as a full-on sales sequence because it's a low price offer or it's just signing up for an event that they'll get value from. So it's a miniaturized version and you're going to hit some high points. So that's what you're doing with this kind of nurture sequence. And there are 4 email types that you'll use, but really only 3 of them are kind of the core of it. One of them is what I call the value load, and we'll talk about each of these in a second. One of them is called an objection busters. A third one is called case studies. You pretty much know what that one is. And then the last one is what I call a can I help. This one is just kind of a very soft sell, and we'll talk about that. So it's a very easy, light lift. And we're going to talk about each one of these in turn. Now, what I want you to understand is you don't have to use every email type in each sequence, but you will want to include multiple email types. So you're not going to send an email sequence that is nothing but objection busters, for example, or nothing but case studies. You're going to mix it up, but you don't have to use all 4 in every sequence. So let's talk a little bit more about each style of email. The value load, this is a classic type of email that you'll use in sales styles email sequences. And what you're doing is showing them the amazing value they'll get by saying yes. We will revisit this email type and in much more depth when we get to the module about promo sequences, because in promo sequences and sales sequences, this will be the first big email you send, and it is a very important one where you're doing a lot of kind of conversion copy and have those things in it. That's what you'll be doing. Now, here at this stage, you don't have to go that deep into it because it's a low price offer or a webinar registration. So this doesn't have to be as involved as, for example, if you're selling a $1,000 product. If you're selling a $1,000 product, you need to build the value up. Basically, what this email is doing is making people understand what are they going to get. And I'm not talking about like the features. I'm talking about what is kind of the transformation. What is it going to do for them to say yes to whatever you're offering? Here's the structure for the email you're going to use. It's a 4-part structure, and you'll recognize it because it's very similar to the 3-part structure I talked about in the last lesson, what I call my kind of structure, the overall structure for a story-based email. Here, you're going to use a hook, a personal story or an analogy, a section that lays out the value, and then a call to action. The call to action is going to be either buy my product or register for the webinar or register for the event. That's the call to action. What's slightly different about this style of email is that you have this section that is laying out the value of whatever it is. It will often be done with bullet points. It's going to be kind of conversion style where you're really helping people to understand what they're getting and what the value is. So that's the piece that you add to the standard structure here because that's the purpose of this email. So that's your value load email. Now, the next type of email to use is an objection buster. This email is an email to address one of the biggest reasons that people didn't take action. And you're going to use 1 objection per email. So you might have 2 objection busters in a single email sequence, but each one of them will only cover 1 objection. In one of the swipe files that's included here in this section, you'll see I have this. And basically, we have 2 different objections we're busting, and it's related to email. And one of the objections is, but I don't have a list yet, so why do I need to worry about this? Because if you think about it, some people might say, I don't need to worry about mastering writing emails if I don't yet have an email list. Well, we bust that by saying, look, if you don't have an email list, it's still a great time to do this because you'll be writing emails the right way from the beginning. So that's how we bust that objection. So that's an example of the kind of thing that you'll do it. And separately, like I have an objection buster that, but they've heard that email is dead. And so I'm busting that and saying email's not dead. People are just doing it wrong. So those are examples of objection busters. So again, the structure for this is very similar to the value load, except instead of kind of the section playing up the value, you have a section where you are addressing the objection. And the way you're doing that is deconstructing it and showing why the objection is wrong based upon all of the different tools you have to actually convince people of that objection being wrong. Now, that's an act of making arguments, of explaining why things are and aren't, why their arguments or the objections don't apply, etc. We're not going to cover that here because you'll have to figure out how to do that for your product and your offer specifically. But that's what you're adding into this style of email. Now, the third style of email is a case study. This is just basically a story-based testimonial. And I want you to understand this, that a quote testimonial where someone says, "Oh, your product is the best thing since sliced bread," is great. But that's not really going to get the true kind of power across. Instead, you want to tell a student's success story. Talk about what they were able to do, how they were able to do it, how quickly, all of those things to play up the value of the product, of the webinar, whatever it is. You're going to use those case studies. And if you're right now have been relying on testimonials, I want you to get into the practice of creating case studies instead, because story-based case studies are much more effective than testimonials. So that's what this style of email is. It has a slightly different structure. Instead of your personal story, you simply have a hook. You tell the student's case study, their story, and then you have a call to action to buy, to whatever, to get, hey, if you want to get the same results as this person, boom, do this. So it's very simple, very straightforward. And you'll see an example of that in the swipe that you're getting in this lesson. So that's the case study structure. Now, the final email, and like I said, this is not really a different style, but it is a simple, what I call a can I help email. It is a soft sell email where you offer to answer questions or help the subscriber. It's not something that is very involved. There's not really a formal structure to this type of email. It tends to be short and sweet. You basically just drop a single link to the registration page or to the product purchase page, and then separately say, look, I'm here to answer any questions you have now and in the future to help you make the most of this, whatever it is, whatever journey they're on. So it is short, sweet. Again, you'll see an example of this in the swipe that's attached. It's just hey, I'm here to help. If I can ever help, let me know. And then you have a link that is, like I say, a soft sell, just one last chance till they have it. And this will be generally, and we'll talk about where this falls, you can imagine it tends to be the last email. So let's talk about email order. There is not like a specific order that you must follow because it's going to depend on what emails you include. But there are some rules, and we're going to talk about those rules that will help you create the order. So if you are going to include a value load email, it should come first. The value load, because what you're doing is essentially saying, this thing is crazy valuable, here's what's in it. That makes sense to be the first email in the sequence. Now, sometimes you're not going to send a value load because, for example, you had them land on a page where you already told them the offer. So they already know, so you might decide not to include a value load. But if you include one, it is the first email up. Rule number 2, your case study email, if you send one, will be the second email normally. It's going to fit between value load and objection buster emails. So if you don't want to do a value load email, you would tend to go with objection buster, case study, objection buster. That's kind of the order that your emails would go. If you do the value load, you're going to do value load, case study, objection buster emails. That's the general flow you will go with. Now, rule number 3, You can use multiple objection buster or case study emails in a single sequence. And if you do that, put the most important one first. In other words, if you say, hey, I've got these 2 objections I want to address, and it's 1 per email, which one is the most important one to address? That one comes earlier in the sequence. If you're going to use 2 case studies, what is the one that I think is going to resonate the most with my audience? I'm going to put that one first. And you're going to generally kind of alternate. So again, like I said, if you're going to use multiple case studies, you're probably then going to have still sandwich. So maybe you're going to have a value load, a case study, an objection buster, and then a case study. That would be a sequence. Or you might do objection buster, case study, objection buster, case study. You could do that. But you want to alternate is the concept. You don't want to have 2 of the same kind of email in a row. Now, that's kind of how you order it. Now, rule number 4, generally you're going to want this sequence to be between 3 and 5 emails long. Again, this is not a huge purchase. It is not a huge decision. If someone can't decide to buy a $27 product, if you're like in my space, or if you're in like a more consumer-facing space, like a $7 offer, if they can't make that decision within 5 emails, sending them 7 is probably not going to make the difference, right? And so you're going to generally go between 3 and 5 emails is the sweet spot here. So if that's the number you're shooting for, you can kind of see how it starts to fit in. If I'm going to send 3, I'm going to send no more than 1 case study and either 2 objection busters or a value load, a case study, and an objection buster generally. If you're going to do 4, you can have a little more play. And if you're going to do 5, you have a little more play. So that's where you're going to want to be. Keep it simple here. Don't make this over involved. Don't make it, very hard. You're going to see in the swipe that I'm giving you, there's a 3 email sequence and a 4 email sequence. Those are what I went with to give you examples because I want you to see the different ways to do it. So that's the number of emails. And then if you send a can I help email, it's the last email in the sequence. Because it's a soft sell, you're basically done. You're really just more trying to say, look, I'm here to help. And if you think about it, you're establishing yourself as being giving, which will help to really kind of get yourself, some momentum with the people and with your subscribers. So that's how you would use that email if you're going to choose to use it at all. That's the email that you're least likely to use. You would not use that during a webinar invite series for the most part, but you might in a sales if you're trying to sell them on an actual product for a Tripwire. So that's a general rule there. So those are the rules for sequencing and setting things up in order. Now, as with all sales style sequences, a product nurture sequence is built on momentum. And so you want to send the emails on back-to-back days. So this means if you're going with a 3 email sequence, it's going to be over 3 days, no more than 3 days. You might even do it a little bit more frequently. For example, if you have a Tripwire offer and they only have 48 hours from the time they land on the page until they have to do it, you have to pack all of that into that time frame. So you just want to make sure that you fit it within that 48-hour time period. So you just have to sequence it that way, but no less frequently than back-to-back days, because again, it's really about kind of like keeping them moving forward and keeping the coaching happening. If you space it out too much, they will lose any momentum they had from the last email that they saw. So that's the timing. Now, the key lesson takeaway here is that for product style nurture sequences, or for a product style nurture sequence, you're going to create emails that create value and overcome objections so subscribers will take the next step. That's what you're doing, and you're going to map it out using the rules that we've created and writing the emails. Now, in helping you to do that, there is swipe copy here in this lesson that will help you to see how I've put together examples of this to help you do the process. And when it comes to writing the emails, again, you have in the resources section, there is a lesson about writing story-based emails. That's where you're going to start with kind of learning how to do the overall structure. And then here with like the value load, you have to insert the value section. And with the objection buster, you have to address or add in the objection busting section. And again, you'll see how that's done in the swipe copy in this lesson, and you can use that as a guide on how to actually do that work. So that's it for this module. In the next module, we're going to cover welcome sequences. So you'll learn all about welcome sequences, how to craft your perfect welcome sequence, and also how to repurpose your existing content so you aren't starting from scratch. So that's what we'll cover in the next module. I will see you there.